Good day, everyone. This is my first post-spring break video, focusing on an in-class exercise that we got partially through, given some headaches with geocoding and grabbing some files. With that though, the purpose of the walkthrough is to introduce geocoding, how to join data, so bringing in some prior examples of exercises we did, and then building up to the ability to use and calculate crime rates in ArcGIS. Overall assignment is going to link to making a map in ArcGIS, exporting it, putting it into some type of infographic, i.e. PowerPoint or Canva, to get students used to making a finished, polished product outside of just a map, and how a map can be used to assist or aid in other different types of materials. With that, I'm going to pull this off to the side of the screen. I'll copy paste this in the video itself. But with that, you can see we need some data from different data portals. The Little Rock data portal being the city boundary, block groups, crime data. Social Explorer, we're just going to grab the census block group total population for these block groups within Little Rock. Then we're going to use the Arkansas GIS office to download a road Centerline file that we will use as the base for building an address locator. I've already downloaded this because you can see here, it emails you a link that automatically downloads. To save some time, I've already done this, but I'll walk through the steps of how to get this data. And then it's putting it into Arc Pro and going through the steps of making an address locator, geocoding that data, and then how you can use some of that in the long run to join other population data, calculate a crime rate, and then display that. So with that, I'm going to pull that off to the side just so I recall what all I am downloading for this. But the first one is the data portal for Little Rock itself. Use this one many times, so it should be pretty standard at this point that you're comfortable with this, especially if you're in the class. But most cities nowadays have larger or medium size, typically have some type of data portal for it. So I need a boundary file. So I'm going to grab the Little Rock city boundaries, export this as a shapefile. So this will be a boundary file that I can open up into Arc Pro once I unzip it. I also need, and this was newer that I just noticed when I was building this assignment for class, was the census block groups. And as a forewarning, we'll see this in Arc Pro. They don't clip these boundaries, so it's any census block group that intersects the city as a whole. So we'll see what that looks like, especially with the crime data of you have larger areas that you can't have crime necessarily occur in. So long run, you should proportion some of this out. But we're good to go. We're going to export this as a shapefile as well. Download it. And we've used this many a times before, the Little Rock crime data. And this is asking you to download it all, clean it up to delete what you don't need. I asked the students to go ahead and delete the latitude and longitude. It's pretty common now, especially with newer data, to have the latitude and longitude attached to it. Just given the RMS style, the process the system they have set up, it will attach to it. But we're going to delete it just to go through LRPD, the steps of creating an address locator, building that out. I'm going to open this, but I'm not going to do anything with it quite yet. I'm just going to have it open in Excel. Let's keep downloading some data. So for Little Rock now, we have the boundary, we have the block groups, we have our crime data. Next step is going to Social Explorer. With this, I'm already logged in since I'm on campus. Tables, and I'm asking for the total population. You can use either the ACS or decennial census since we'll have the population estimates. With that, there we go. Third time's a charm. Hop into the ACS, newest one. You can either 2020 or 2021. I'm okay with either one. Begin report. Remember, I'm asking for block groups within Pulaski County. Pulaski County also contains Little Rock. So I'm making a smaller subset of data so you don't have to download as much and parse it down. With that, the geographic type, again, I want a block group here. Within what state? Arkansas. Within what county? Little Rock is within Pulaski County. So with that, I don't care about the census tract. I want all of the block groups within Pulaski County. So I'm going to add that and then proceed to tables. I'm simply asking for total population. We've used Social Explorer to download multiple types of data for our purposes today. Total population, show results. We have that here. Hop over to data download. First row is labels. You can see we have 287. So if you're walking through this in class and you see one selected here, you might have selected your geographic type as county, selected Pulaski County. So you're only going to get one population measure for it. You want to see 287. Keep in mind, these are block groups within Pulaski County, and then we'll merge these or join these with our block group shapefile to identify the one specifically intersecting Little Rock. Download this as a CSV, LR total pop, save it. I'm going to go ahead and open it similarly because we're going to have to clean this up like we've had before, especially with the GEOID. But for now, let's get back into the last data point that we would need is a street layer. The street layer is what we're going to use to identify and create an address locator to where we can match address information for crime incidents and hopefully match a high percentage of those to a spatial reference point on a map so we have point data for it. With that, Arkansas is pretty good with their Arkansas GIS office. It used to be called Geosource, so you can see that pops up for me. And if you come into the GIS office, what I'm wanting to add or search for is oftentimes these are referred to as Centerline files, and truly the centerline of a road itself. Oh, centerline was it road? There we go. Makes it a bit easier. So this is the file that I need. And if you get into the metadata, it will show you everything that it has in it. And this is why it's a very important part. So we'll have all the address information that we need in it to build out an address locator, has the spatial reference points and everything to that as well. But for now, we're going to add it to our cart. And with that, we're going to go to our checkout. You can see we have our road centerline file, proceed to download. And this is where it gives you the options to clip your data. And we'll get into this in GIS of how to clip files itself. Imagine you have the entire state and you want to clip it by a specific region. In our case, it's Little Rock. So we want to clip based on a city. The city that we're interested in is Little Rock. Don't select Little Flock here that I've done many, many times before when I wasn't paying too close attention. We want to keep it as a shapefile. And Little Rock is in Arkansas State Plain South, so I prefer that. That will give us XY coordinates. A lot of the data that we've been working with is the World Geographic System, which gives you the lat and long. The crime data already has that in it, but to do specific spatial analyses in the future that we'll get into, we'll need it in a projected coordinate system in the Arkansas State Plain South for where Little Rock is. It's south versus north, so we're good to go there. And this is where you would insert your email address here, and then hit place download. It takes a few minutes. You get sent an email. It's a one-click download, and you can see I have it in my folder already, and I already unzipped it here. So I have all the files now. What I need to get into first is cleaning up the total population and crime data itself. So I'm going to open up the crime data one first. And here I ask students to go ahead, and this is just out of habit and as a reminder, year, month, hour, day, some of the temporal features that we can extract from our incident date here, primarily because oftentimes I've had issues, depending on how quickly I'm doing something, of when it's time and date stamp in the same field. ArcGIS Pro doesn't always like that and take it in. So I'm going to add in a few columns here. I'm going to do year, month, day, and hour. Year is still a year. Select R1. If you remember, and I'm going to do this at the end, since I inserted next to a custom field, Excel is trying to match what I'm looking for there. We'll correct that here in a second. Here, I want to do my month, so it's text, and I want the text version of the month itself. So I want it to say January in this response, so 4 M's within parentheses. Close it off. Same with day. I want it to be, oops, I'm typing it the wrong way. I want it to be text as well. I'm going to specify the format as the long day text. An hour is simply hour, and grab that from this field. You can see I have these same issues. It says custom. This is where you want to make all of these general just to make it out of habit. Registers it as the formula in a general field itself. With that, if you've done multiple ones of these, you can copy all of them down at the same time instead of doing them individually. What I recommend is once you are done with these and you're happy with it, you can see as I click around, the formula bar up here represents the formula that's extracting, say, Saturday from this date. What I recommend is copying these and then pasting them as the value itself. So now when I click on that Saturday, it says Saturday is no longer having a formula behind it, extracting it from another field. So if you were to delete columns, this value stays here versus if you left it as a formula and deleted the incident date, that would not have a reference to pull that from anymore. With that, I also ask students to go ahead and delete the lat, long, and location just so they don't get in the habit of just display XY coordinates. This means you now have to use the incident location, so the address, city, state, zip, to help you out. And we're going to use this within ArcGIS Pro. But before that, I asked the students to make a new workbook of only 2023 homicide and ag assault. Keep in mind that I said new workbook, not a sheet. So a sheet would be going down here and adding that in. I don't want that here. I want a new workbook, so an entirely new Excel document. This will help with file size when we go into ArcGIS Pro to open it up. So with that, I need to apply a few filters. So adding my filters, I want only 2023. Then I hop over to the offense description. I'm going to pull in the ag assault and murder non-negligent manslaughter. So we now have a subset of data that's filtered. I'm going to select A1, Control Shift down right arrow, copy this, and then Control N, V if you're on a PC, and this is now a new workbook. You can see up here, book 1, and I'm left with a subset of data that's only 2023 ag assault and homicide. And you can see we're about 692 in terms of incidents. Remember, subtract the first one for the column headings. And I'm going to save this as a new file as well. So it's saving to my OneDrive, so I don't want that. This is what happened in class when I did it as well. When students couldn't find some of their data sets, it defaults to OneDrive on campus. So just make sure you go to the folder that you want it to save to make life a bit easier. I'm in week 10. So this is LRPD violence 2023. So keep in mind, I leave out rape because the address information is often not disclosed, and robbery to me is a different crime type to where I like to look at that separately. So we're good to go here. We now have a data set that we need to geocode. I want the XY coordinates of these 692 violent incidents that were occurred already in 2023. This file is good, so I'm going to exit out of this. I'm going to save my original one just to have it in case I need it, but I still have my ACS data that has the total population. And this, I'm going to delete our second row because this is truly the variable names, and I'll just space them out so you can see. Not as descriptive as our top row. That's why I like the output of the column labels. Gives you a bit more information to work with. I'm going to delete all these blank ones here in the middle and walk through a couple of the steps here. So you'll notice that something different here, and I'm just going to delete a few more. That when we dealt with state and city, we dealt with, or state and county. State has 2 digits, county has 3, so you had a 5 part there. When we went to tract is up to 6, so you had to add another 6 to that, making it 11 characters. We're now at a smaller subunit or geographic unit. Block groups are within tracts itself. So with that, that means you have to then tease out these 12 digits over here that are on the right. When I say that, you can see here, and if I hit Control Z a couple times, let me pull back in the track level information. I'll delete everything else up to it. Delete these. So now you can see this a bit easier of, we have the same census tract, so 500 here within Pulaski County, within Arkansas as a whole. We have 3 different smaller units, 1, 2, and 3, that are within the census tract itself. So you can see how that changes the end of this unique identifier, the GEOID, to reflect a different spatial unit. At tract, this would all be 1. Oftentimes it's broken up based on population itself, so these break up into smaller population units as well. You can see this is why it's important to grab the 12 right digits. If we did 11, we would have multiple duplicates of the 500 here, the 1100 here. So this is what helps you with that. Keep in mind our first column's missing that 0. We can easily add that to it as well with your concatenation and just adding that in. For our purposes and kind of just keeping consistent with what we've done, I'm going to clean this up to just make it a bit easier. I'm going to use and insert a column, call it GEOID. And again, I want to pull out the right part of this text file here. So I'm clicking that geographic identifier G2, and I want the 12 right characters. So keep in mind 2 for state, 3 for county, 6 for census tract, and then 1 for the block group as well. So I want 12 characters to the right, so that will give me everything to the right of where it has US. And there we go. Fill that down, and again, you can see the formula in the formula bar that's extracting this from this. So I'm going to copy and paste this as values to no longer call on that. So if I were to delete this, I still have my values here, so we're good with that. Going to delete these because I no longer need them, and just clean it up a bit more to where I'm left with the original FIPS that's missing that 0 in the front, the one that we created, because we'll need that to join it with our boundary file block groups. And this one I'm just going to shorten to say total pop, or total. And this is the population per neighborhood or community for our block groups. And remember, we downloaded this for Pulaski County, so it's a larger data set than just Little Rock, and we're going to join our data in Arc Pro. So with that, we now have our data sets ready. So let's hop into Arc Pro. I've already opened the street file here, so I already added the data and added this in, and it's transportation.roads, and you can see here, and we'll get into this a bit more, all the information's embedded in the table that we'll use to geocode our information or our crime data itself. So with that, let's add in a couple other data points that we already downloaded. So let's get into week 10. I need to refresh mine. There we go. So with that, we have, when I say that, not everything's coming up yet. Oh, I didn't unzip it, did I? No, I did not. So unzip, extract all. Then also the city boundaries, extract all. There we go. So now if I update, I'll probably have to exit out and then add data again. There we are. So we have census block groups that we need to add in. And you'll see here, these are the streets for Little Rock specifically, and the block groups that intersect the boundary. I'm going to rename this since I already opened it. And it's going to be block groups intersecting. And I'm putting intersecting in to make that clear. And this will be even easier to see once I bring in that city boundary file itself. And if I turn off the roads, I'm going to change this just to have the black outline. You can see it's truly the block groups that intersect this boundary file, so it's grabbing it all. Ideally, and we'll get into this in some of our ability to our analysis and using some of our tools, for whatever reason might have blacked out there, but we'll have clip as a pretty common one that we'll use. You can clip this underlying layer to the boundary of the Little Rock shapefile. But for now, we're good to go. We're still going to display it and kind of make it this way. With that, we also have our other data that we want to bring in, and that was our 2023 violence. Sheet 1, not a great name for it. And then we also had our total population. I want to make sure it was the one that we corrected. Yep, there we go. So you'll see in both of these sheets that we now have our updated 2023 crime data, address, no lat and long, so we can't just right click on it and hit display XY data. So we do not have a lat and long, that's why we have to geocode this data as a whole. With that, if you remember what we covered in the prior weeks, oh, this kicked out the 02, which I did not expect. So I'm going to open that file again, because I did not change it to an Excel file. I kept it as a CSV, so it kicked out the 0. If you'll notice here, and I'm just going to update this one, we can do concat, which is a very similar one of adding, and you can do it a couple different ways. And I want the A1, oops, it was A2. So that I was able to grab that 0, bring it back in, and I'm going to redo this downwards. Copy, paste as values, and save this as a workbook. And now that leading 0 will stay in, which I also in the habit of. I'm going to remove this, add data, update, and now I have the total population. And now when I open up the total population, we have that leading 0 back. That was my mistake, but we all do it at some point when we work with GIS data. With that, the big part is we want to use our street layer now, so the one here, to geocode our crime data. So with this we have, and this is the tough part for people to get used to, these are the ranges of street numbers for each individual street. So read this as left address from, left address to. So this would be the range of 4501 to 4509. This one would be right address from, right address to, which would be 4500 to 4510. Our street name, the type it is, so avenue, we have our direction. Oftentimes when I make my address locators, and everyone's different about this, I typically leave off the prefix direction because I have a lot of issues with east and west, and oftentimes I'll change it to where it connects as tie. But for our purposes today, we'll mostly deal with street name and type, and I'll throw in directions just to show you. But you can see here, we'll have some probably bigger issues than what we did in class. But for now, we want to actually make an address locator. We want to use this information to then geocode this crime data. So right now we can't display this. We have a table, we have addresses, but we can't see this on the map. So if we go into analysis, tools, and you can search, create address locator, create locator. But if you go into your toolboxes over here, and we haven't done much with this yet, we will in the coming weeks, geocoding tools, and you want to create a locator. And if you see these that say geocode addresses, if you have credits for ArcGIS Pro, Esri, you can use this. It does cost money though. So create a locator. We're in the United States. Our primary table here is that transportation road file. So we want to say what it is. This is a street address file. And here it's going to ask you to fill out these. Some are required parameter fields. Ideally, and this is why I introduced left house number from, that is our PL underscore add underscore F. So left house from, and we fill these in. Left from and to, right from and to. So you just change it from the PR. And there we go. And we'll go ahead. We didn't do this in class, and I'll show you prefix direction. So we have that as an option. Street name is the street underscore name one. If we come down, we also have, oops, I forgot to do the suffix type, and that's the type. We'll want to say what left city and right city is. Our city is truly city L and city R for Little Rock itself. And the interesting part is the road file itself is going to have other cities in it. So within Little Rock, there's also Mableville and Alexander. Our crime data does not reflect that, and that becomes an issue of when you go to rematch and geocode, you have to change the city given our street layer identifies that those are different, but in our crime data, it all comes back to Little Rock when it's technically not. We'll deal with that, pretty common when you have certain jurisdictions. We also want to assign a state. In this file, we actually have the abbreviated version itself, so we want to do left state abbreviation. And we'll find that to where it is state L, and the right state abbreviation. Obviously, these are all Arkansas, but it helps us there. You can do zip code if you want. Some students in class did this for our purposes today. I'm not going to. You can see all of the different options in here. So with that, the last one we have to do is, well, second to last, specify where you want to save this. Locator, LR. In the language code, we're in English. We're not going to get into the optional parameters for now. This is truly an introduction to it. Hit run. You'll probably get a couple warnings here just given our street layer file. Keep in mind, nothing's going to generate for you. This is making a locator in the background. The warnings are fine here, just given some of the issues with the street layer itself and some of the cells that are missing. But now we made an address locator. Now we can use that locator with our crime data to actually make points on a map. So if I right click here, I now want to geocode a table. So keep in mind, our crime data is a table. We're looking at this, we see the information, we want to use this to geocode now. So with that, we want to geocode the table, and it gives you some nice walkthrough steps. I like this almost wizard setup for it. You can actually just go to the tool if you want. This step-by-step process is helpful when you're getting new. Input locator, this is the one you just created, so mine's locator underscore LR. Next, sheet one, and when it's asking here if it's one field, field and country field, or more than one field, it's asking how's the address essentially stored. If you look in here, I have an incident location, which is the address, city, state, zip. So it's across more than one field. So I want to keep it as this. With it, it's now asking you to fill those out. It's pretty good at matching city and state and zip. If I would have kept address or changed it in the Excel sheet to say incident address or just address, it would have probably picked it up here. Here, I'm just going to specify that this is the incident location. Scroll down, go to next. What I want this to save as, I'm just changing this to violence. It's going to make me go into it. I did this in class. Violence 2023, Little Rock. I like that it defaults to add this to my map once it's completed. For now, we're going to keep address location preferred. We're also going to do, and this is where you can change a couple of different fields, what's all outputting. Oftentimes I'll do more minimal than all, but for our purposes, keep it to all. Don't mess with these for now. Hit finish. It's just going over everything you just filled out. And with that, you can now hit run. And it's going to use that locator, go through these 692 different crime incidents and try to match them. You can see here we had 690 out of 692 match, which is phenomenal. With that, we had one unmatched, one tied. So what we didn't get to in class, we got to this point. When we have unmatched and tied ones, yes, we want to try to rematch those. So we want to see which ones did not come back. So we can see here we have the unmatched, matched, and tied candidates. We only had one, so you can see it's 1 of 1 here. And we have 12805 Huff Lane. And oftentimes the first thing I do when something like this happens is, say I go to Google, I'm going to type in this address and see, does it truly exist in Little Rock? And you can see here, and this is one of the examples that it becomes an issue. This is technically Alexander, still in Little Rock as a whole in the city boundary. It's just annexed part. So with that, we know we need to change the city. So if I click on Little Rock and change it to Alexander, remember our street file, our layer of transportation roads actually has this in it. So I hit enter, hit apply. You can see now it's located this address for us. I like it. It's where it's supposed to be. I can hit that check mark now to where it's now matched. So you can see up here updates to where I only have a matched and tied now. And let's look at the tied one. So I have 6510 Mableville, Cutoff, and Pike. Given the road file, and this has been a pain over the years, is it specifies that it is cut off here. So CTF, it's just the abbreviation for it. Mayville Pike is a separate road, so this one is cut off. So I just want to make sure it is this one, and it's good to go there. And what you can do, and this is why I don't like, I wish you could hit the check mark to make it matched here. Oftentimes what I'll do is click to unmatch, have it bring up these options here, and it's still cut off, match it. So when I look at my status now, these are all M. So if it was tied, it would be a T. If it was unmatched, it would be a U. Now all of these are done. I have 692 out of 692 mapped, and I'm happy with that. That's 100%. It's rare if you have historical data, especially. But now if I were to zoom out, so I'm going to come back to map, close out of my address locator, geocoding table, geoprocessing. I'm good there. I'm just going to zoom out. You can see I now have my crime points within Little Rock as a whole. So if I even turned off my street layer, you can see where these are at. We'll get into in the coming weeks how to make hotspot maps, how to do a couple different things at different spatial units of analysis. But with that, we now have a point layer reflecting violence in Little Rock in the first couple months of 2023. You can still change the symbology here, and they have all different types of styles. So if I typed in crime here, you have police stations. Usually it comes back with more than that. Gun, nothing. Huh. Oh, I did project styles. There we go. So if I type in crime, you can see we have quite a few different types of symbols that pop up for us, depending on what you want to use. These aren't all homicides. They're not all gun related. You could select out. Just keep in mind, I'm going to exit out all of these. This is now a separate layer. So you have now a point map of our sheet here. So if I open this attribute table, I could select out, if we scroll, and this is all the information it made when it geocoded these addresses for us, how it matched it, the address it matched it to, the street name. So this is truly when I left it at all. It gave all of this information at the end of it though, and this is the cool part, we have the X and Y coordinates now. We have our original data of incident date, year, month, day, hour. We could still select out if we wanted to only focus on some type of firearm related crime, we could select those out and make a subset for it. So we have those options to work with. There's a lot of different options here if you want to make it diamonds and all that, just to reflect crime itself. So now we have a map of points in Little Rock for violence in 2023. With that, we also have these other layers here that reflect our block groups and our total population. So if you remember, I'm going to turn off our layer there. If I open up this attribute table, we have our GEOID 20 that reflects our state, county, tract, and block group combined together that we can now join with our total population, the table data. So with that, we want to join data to our block group shapefile. So I want to come to join and relate and add a join, not a spatial join, it's a table join. So we go to add join. And here I want the table of total pop. And I have to specify which field I want it to join on. So it's GEOID 2. And this one, you can see it matches GEOID. So if I were to open this attribute table again, you can see that's the one I want it to match on. You can hit validate join if you would like. I'm okay with just running it. So now if I scroll to the right, each one of these now has a population to it. So I can display this one now, symbology wise, based on a graduated color. Based on that, not the FIPS, I want the total population. And with that, I don't want natural breaks, I want quantile. You can see where some of the more heavily populated areas are versus the less populated areas. Keep in mind, block groups are oftentimes meant based on size to reflective of population. So population density here will work as well, especially if you're looking at crime rates. But at this point, we now have population. And then if I layer over, I'll change the color scheme of this just because I know what it's going to look like. I'm going to change this to where black is our more populated areas. I now have points that are on top of a map. So we can essentially have a count of crimes based on each block group within Little Rock. With that, you can make crime rates after that. We'll have the population, it's at the end here. And now I want a count of how many violent crimes there are per block group or neighborhood to make a crime rate. With that, you can already notice, and I'll turn off the block group layer, that all of these did occur within Little Rock and looks pretty close. Every now and then we'll get some outside of the boundaries, not uncommon for that, but this allows you to geocode and see where these are. With that, we want to do a spatial join at this point, and we want to join our points to our polygon. So we're going to add a spatial join now of our violence. And we're going to say intersect, block groups contain, or within, where's contain? Our block groups contain our features here. Click OK. And now at the beginning, I should have, let's see where it all went. There's my population, and there's my join count. So my join count, and trust me, this is a lot of extra information that we'll get in the habit of cleaning up in the long run, but we have our total population and join count here. So what you could do next is to, one, it doesn't allow you to add a field. And we haven't covered this in class. This is why I'm doing it at the tail end. We can export this out. So data export. And when I export it, it's going to keep all these features together. So the output one, going to keep it here. It's going to be block group. So BG pop violence. Click save. And it's going to make a new shapefile for me. I'm going to turn this one off. I'm going to open this attribute table. Same information. So if I scroll over, did I go too far? There we go. Total pop and join count. I can use these and calculate a new field for it. With that, give me 1 second. I'm going to hit pause real quick. All right, now when we're back into working with our data here, we have our join count. So what I want to do at this point is add a field, and it's not letting me, which is interesting. And not surprisingly, since I had it open, I did not save my edits. So now if I click save, yes, I can now add a field. I covered this in my older video. I obviously forgot about it myself, but that's what happens. But now I want to add a column. And what this is going to do is it's essentially like similar to Excel or any other program. It's adding a column, and it's going to be right now at the end. You can change the order of it, but I'm going to keep it at the end. And this is just going to be my rate 10K. So by 10,000 residents, you can do 1,000. Obviously, when you're doing cities, you oftentimes do 100,000. The key part here is you don't want long, you want a double integer or number. So there we go. And we're good to go there. I'm going to hit save at the top. And now I can close this part out, and it kicks me back just into my regular table here. I'm going to scroll all the way to the end. And now I have rate underscore 10K. If I right click on this one, I want to calculate a field. And this is where a little different than what we do in Excel, but similar in a lot of respects. I want to find the variables I'm interested in. So I'm going to write in what I want this to do. So I want my join count, which is my number of violent incidents. And to make a crime rate, I want to divide by that population. So here it's going to be my number of crimes divided by that same population for that block group. And then I want to multiply this by 10,000 to get a crime rate per 10,000. Hit apply, hit OK. If I scroll to the end, and you'll notice some don't have any incidents occur in it. You can see if I zoom in, it actually has none so far this first couple months of the calendar year. But I also can now, if I clear it, change the symbology of it to where I want it to be a graduated color map based on, at the end, that rate per 10,000. I'm going to do quantile. I'm going to change it to 10. So this is going to be 10% intervals to our highest ones at the bottom. And out of habit, I'm just going to reverse order and then reverse the color order as well. I can turn off now the violent points. I'm going to layer on the city. So I'm going to just pull this up. This is the drawing order. Close this out. And as I zoom in, you can see here the areas of Little Rock that are higher. Not shocking if you wanted to turn on the road. You can see I-630 is still one of the big dividing lines in the city. The interstate system as a whole, you can see where that affects it. You have our white flight areas out to the west, what those look like here. So you have a lot of information that you can take from this. You can take this map if you want to export it with all the goodies in it. You can then take that into Canva, PowerPoint, whatever you want to do with that. If you wanted to clean it up even more, and this is what we'll cover in class in the future, is we want to clip our block groups. So this underline one to the city boundary so it doesn't look all wonky here when you see it. If we come to analysis, typically my tools are fairly, I don't know why they're not popping up. You typically have a set here, and this might be because I need an update for it. You have a tool that's called clipping. One I use often, but with that, since it's not popping up, if I come over to my analysis and come into my toolbox and I want to find clip, I can now clip a layer. So if I want to input my block group boundary here that has a population violence, I want to clip it based on my Little Rock City boundary. And this is just added clip to the end. It's saved into my GEOID database, which I'm fine with. If I click run and I turn off this original one down here, I now have and I'm going to just move this up. I now have a clipped layer that doesn't look as bad. Ideally, you proportion out some of the population based on the area. Little Rock also has a block level data available for 2020 that they posted on their data portal as well. But now you have a map that reflects this and makes life a bit easier. So with that, and keep in mind our base layer has roads on it as well. So some people like to put the roads on top of it. It's a little tough to see even when you change some of the colors to it. That makes it even worse. If we did a darker gray. Oftentimes what I would recommend if you have a city that you're using, pull out some of the main streets. So for Little Rock, I often pull out the interstates and then University Ave to show some of the main anchor points or roads within the city so people have an idea for that. The other option is when you have your data set open, is if you see these tabs up here, you have other options, and the second one over here kind of shows it, but you have a transparency option of right now, there is no transparency. Oh, that's the variable one. Transparency rate 10, oops, sorry, rate 10K. You can kind of see, there we go. I still had it in the right place of where I wanted. You can change the transparency levels to it if you want it to be more transparent than others, and kind of how that looks as you shift it from high values to low values within the map. But then you can see the underlying roads, neighborhoods, and everything with that. I was in the right area, just hadn't done that in a minute. I've used other versions of it, but at least lets you see what's going on in those different neighborhoods itself. With that, if there's any questions, I know this is a longer video, please feel free to reach out. Until next time, bye.